Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors with Pre-Singles Counseling. This is part of my Pre-Singles Counseling Coaching Curriculum, where I design lessons and case studies based in the psychology literature on different topics. This Pre-Singles Counseling is targeted to three types of individuals. The first individual is a person who is interested in becoming single. That means that person is not necessarily interested in dating or entering the marriage market. The second individual is a single individual who is interested in entering the dating market. And then the last individual is a single dating individual who is interested in marriage. So take some time to listen to this lesson and or case study. Please leave a comment and I will reply. In addition, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the notification bell if you are interested in further topics. This is Pre-Singles Counseling, a Pre-Singles Counseling Coaching Curriculum. Thank you for visiting the channel. This lesson is subject to fair use, where I will comment, criticize, offer research, as well as teach and provide scholarship. Single women should be knowledgeable about what it means to be single and how to navigate their singleness regardless of a decision to date or marry. This means that single women should take the necessary time to learn about their singleness, set academic, professional, and personal goals, and contemplate whether they are ready to enter the dating market. Single women should never enter the dating market without a goal and a plan. Therefore, one of the most important aspects of being a single woman is that you can plan your transition, establish a time schedule, set mating preferences, and learn about how men and women date. Pre-singles counseling is based in a decision to enter or exit singleness. Pre-singles is the time period between single and contemplation of dating. There is a difference between being a single individual and being a single individual who has entered the dating market, which includes the sex market. Pre-singles counseling reflects the processes by which an individual researches, learns, and plans to navigate life either as a single, a dating single, or a single interested in marriage. So pre-singles defined. Pre-singles counseling is defined as the research processes and planning for entering a state of singlehood. The main target audience is 18 to 45 years of age, man and woman. However, middle school to high school students are considered. Processes include single to single. So that is that transitional time prior to entering the dating market at any age. Single to dating single, that transitional time prior to considering marriage. And then single dating to marriage, that transitional time prior to and after premarital counseling. Pre-singles counseling is the immediate strategy of adopting life plans to manage the self as a responsible individual adult up to and including a major life change. So here are some pre-lecture discussion questions. So are you single? This question means single without separation or dating rotation or on again, off again, boyfriend, or any other romantic relationship, including rebounding and dating. Why are you single? Are you enduring a recent separation from a romantic partner? Do you plan to remain single? What are your plans to change from single to a member of a romantic couple or marriage? Do you have a financial plan as a single woman? And you will see throughout this lecture, this orientation course, that I focus most, if not all, of the topics on having a financial plan. We oftentimes make unsound decisions based upon the fact that we don't have enough money, or we are looking for money, or we are looking for someone to cover us and we are not covering ourselves financially. So keep that in mind. You will see throughout this orientation multiple references to financial planning. Pre-discussion. So what is your SWOT? So I'm using SWOT that you would normally see in business as a way to get you to engage your own personal SWOT. So what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? What are your threats? So after each section, I will ask you what your SWOT is. So the premarital plan, determining your readiness. So premarital counseling is dedicated to those couples who have become engaged and who believe they are ready for marriage. They seek premarital counseling as a requirement for marriage. The pastor or minister requires that the couple seek counseling as a precondition before marriage. However, premarital counseling should also be for the single woman. Premarital counseling is important to determine relationship readiness. So, are you equipped with the tools and skills to work through present and future conflicts? This is relationship readiness. Just because we desire to be in a relationship does not necessarily mean or translate that we are ready for a relationship. That if you are the type of person who like to do door slams and like to argue and like to leave and be gone for days like a wounded deer, you have trouble navigating relationships, particularly navigating the conflict within relationships. You're not a resolver of problems. And that's important to understand because relationship is fraught with problems. It doesn't seem like that when you're making love to somebody, but they are fraught with problems. There are solutions as well. What has been your record of success working through past and present conflicts? Can you go back and look and reflect on past issues that you've had, even just with friends? I'm going to take the romance off the table for a minute. For friends, how long have you stayed mad at a friend? You get mad at each other and then you don't talk to each other for 3 months. Well, you can't do that in a marriage. The friendship I don't know if the friendship is worth it, but the marriage is a completely different context, right? What are your individual needs, expectations, and preferences concerning marriage? This is important. And the only way you're going to know that is you got to know yourself, know thyself, know what you want. That's why it's not always a right thing to do to just go and seek out a relationship before you understand what you need. Because then you get into the relationship and you find yourself wasting other people's times because you should have thought about these things before you engaged in a relationship. What are your expectations? Do you want to have sex early? Do you not? Do you want to wait to sex until your marriage? Do you need to find somebody who thinks that same way? If another person's preference is to have sex after 2 months, but you don't want to do that, that may not necessarily be the right person, right? Some people are vain. Their preferences are to find a 10, a dime piece. They want a trophy wife. Okay, you may be just a regular person, still pretty, but you may not be their preference. And it's important to understand that because people will still marry you until they get their preference, and then they will divorce you, abandon you, and go and marry somebody else. And that's important to understand. Do you know what your needs are? Do you know how to communicate your needs? So that means, are you passive aggressive? You got a need, you want to say it, but you don't want to say it because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, right? Do you have a people pleasing problem, right? What are your actual needs for relationship? So handling stress, marriage requires that two partners be aware of stress and how to handle stress within the marriage environment. Are you a person who is proactive about handling stress? Do you talk things out when a difficulty arises? Do you shut down when stressed? Do you deal with stresses privately? You know, I do know how to handle stress, but and I'm not really afraid of confrontation in terms of somebody confronting something with me. I might still kind of resist, and I have gotten better at confronting things with them. But I'm also the type of person who goes off and needs to think about it too. And that may be confusing to a person who likes to stand there and talk it out. And a lot of times I do that because I just need to get somewhere and think and reflect on what they're saying. I'm not trying to resist it, I'm just trying to understand it. And in that moment, I might feel pressured just to acquiesce and then be mad that I acquiesced and then, bring it up again. And then sometimes we just may be triggered. Something that someone says might trigger us, might trigger us in this belief that we're just not good enough, and everybody sort of flocks to that statement, that feeling. That sometimes it's not always that you're not good enough. Sometimes you're just the issue, and that you need to resolve the issue. And the issue just is you just don't know how to resolve the issue. And so you're not good at resolving a difficulty. And that shows up in multiple areas of your life. But if it's showing up in the personal, where you are living your life with a husband or long-term partner or cohabitation partner, and you're not resolving anything, it's just going to continue to build and build and build and build to one day somebody's going to pack their bags and leave. And so that's something that you should be able to assess how you handle stress, because once you put two people together living together in one house, and now they're married and carrying out everyday married life issues, stress alone has its own challenges, and so you got to be able to handle stress. Finances. Marriage requires that two partners be aware of finances and how to handle finances within the marriage environment. Are you a person who believes that you should keep your finances separate? Are you a person who believes that debt should be brought into a marriage environment? Are you a person who believes that you must help pay a potential partner's child support? Or are you a person who believes in making more money than your partner? Finances is separate. It just depends. I'm not sure today that I would have just one bank account with my future husband, right? I think we should have 3 bank accounts. I think I should have a bank account at my place, at my bank, and he should have his own bank account at his bank, and then we have a bank account that is solely for paying bills and filing taxes. So that if something happens and there's a tax obligation, it will be attached to that bank versus our individual banks, and we can still carry out our lives as married people. Also, I do have a fear of one day someone cleaning out my bank account and leaving me, completely financially helpless. Because once the person is placed as a joint owner on the account, they are no different than you are, and they can take whatever money they want to take out of that account. It gets a little tricky. I think there should be one will that we have together that is for the house and the kids and whatever. And then we each have an individual will for any assets that we have that are, separate charitable assets, things like that. So again, it gets a little tricky. Bringing debt into the marriage environment, if it's sort of like credit card debt and it's minor, that may be a little different. But if you're bringing, I've heard somebody say, I don't want to marry someone with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. And I was kind of offended by that because that person used college to invest in themselves, right? And no one is expecting you. I'm not expecting you to pay my college debt, my student loan debt. But I said to myself, you wouldn't marry somebody with student loan debt. But that's that person's preference. That's that person's prerogative. They have every right. But then I began to think about it, and I said to myself, well, it's not right to bring into a marriage that level of debt, and that on some level you're going to have to resolve that, get it down to at least half or something like that, because you don't want someone to feel obligated to pay the debt that you incurred. And then child support. So then that means if you're not obligated to contribute to paying my debt, then I'm not necessarily obligated to paying your child support, because that's your child. The child is going to feel welcomed and loved in the house, but that's still your child. That's why I say separate bank accounts is important, because if there's a child support obligation issue, financial issue, then they're going to attach to his or her account, and we still need to be able to pay bills. And so that's why I think it's important. And many women have sort of helped pay their husband's child support, but I don't think we should do that anymore, because that is that person's child. He is responsible to pay for his child, and he needs to pay for his child. And then what about making more money than your partner? That just may be inevitable. It depends, it depends on your partner's field, what type of job he works, etc. So that may be unavoidable. Family decisions. So marriage requires that two partners make family decisions within the marriage environment. Are you a person willing to engage in mutual decision making? Or are you a person who must have the last word in decision making? Man is head of the house in a marriage. So ultimately, that last decision is based upon what he decides, but it would be helpful to be partners on certain decision making. That's why sitting down, looking at the budget, looking at certain decisions, having a conversation instead of just coming in and saying, I'm going to do this, right, regardless of what you think about it, it's much more productive. It's much more respectful. It doesn't mean that I'm against what you're doing. Let's just sit down and have a conversation about it, so we both engage each other. And that's why it's important to understand how you handle stress, how you handle difficulty, how you handle challenges, because if you're saying, I'm just going to make this decision on my own, well, you're basically still living single. You still have a single mindset, and you're going to have to eventually move that mindset on some things to a mutual mindset. And then there are other things you might just have to have the last word on. It just depends. Kids. Marriage requires that two partners make decisions about having kids within the marriage environment. Do you want to have kids? Do you have the patience for kids? Are you willing to marry a partner who has kids? What are your preferences for child rearing? So, that first question, do you want to have kids, is a very important question. You should not force yourself to want to have kids if you don't want to have kids. It doesn't matter if you love the person you are married to. You should have asked that question much earlier, way before the marriage. So that if you ask that question and he wants to have kids and you don't, then you don't need to waste his time, because even if you decide to change your mind and have kids, I think you're going to resent it. Somewhere you're going to resent it. You're going to resent the fact, you're going to feel like he pushed you into it, that the sex that you had that night that produced that egg, he willed it. And you didn't want it, and there's some kind of resentment that you may have. You may not necessarily treat the child wrong, but there's still something between you two that feels like a gap. It's also important to know if you have patience for kids. If you don't hang around kids right now, it's likely that you don't have patience for kids. I don't really have patience for kids. I think they're beautiful, they're wonderful. They always love me. But I'm a loner. I don't really need to have kids in order to make my life important. So it would be better to find somebody, or they found me, maybe he already has kids and they're all grown and he doesn't really want any more kids. That's a better mate for me than a person who wants kids, especially at a later life. Late in life. Are you willing to marry a partner who has kids? That's not a problem for me. I would venture to say maybe younger kids might be, even though I wouldn't treat them wrong. But a preference might be to have kids. My partner has kids that are already near grown, probably teenagers, and near college age. And then what are your preferences for child rearing? So preferences for child rearing are predicated on how you grew up and how your parents reared and disciplined you. If you're used to the belt, you're usually going to bring the belt into your family environment. If you're used to going to the corner and having a timeout, you're going to usually do the same to your own kids. So I'm not quite sure we need to move certain child rearing practices over into the child rearing that we need to do with our own children. I'm not quite sure that the belt is still necessary. I do think some discipline is necessary, but the belt itself might not necessarily be necessary today. You may have to maybe design a different strategy to help kids today, because you can punish them and they still do what they want to do. So I think the best way to mess with kids, in a sense, is to make them work. Increase whatever work they're doing, so that they tend to be a little bit upset with that. Careers. Marriage requires that two partners work and fulfill career expectations within the marriage environment. So what are your expectations about work and pursuing a career? Are you committed to your career? How will you ensure that there is flexibility in your career to meet the demands of marriage? What are your beliefs about a potential partner quitting his job or career? One thing about it, there's a difference between work and then pursuing a career. You can go to work, clock in, work, and then clock out. There's no career component. But pursuing a career is always going to take some kind of education component. It's always going to take some putting in your dues. It might take a shift in geography. You may have to leave and go somewhere else, right? So once you start something like that, that means you're going to have to be committed to it. And it depends on how far you want to take it. There are people who already know that they want to become deans of a department, of a division, right? There are people who already know that they want to become a vice president or a CEO of a company, right? And they sort of tailor all their efforts to doing it. It may take them 25 years to become a CEO, but they knew from somewhere inside their heart, mind, soul that that's what they wanted to do. So if you want that, you're going to have to find the partner who is okay with that. I'm not quite sure you can find someone who is chasing a career unless you are within the same industry, within the same specialty. Like, for instance, you could be both attorneys and you want to work for, you're like a public attorney and you want to work for the government, and you're making it, you're working up the career ladder, hopefully working for the White House or something like that. Okay, well, you're both in the same context, the same environments, and you're both pushing to make it up those environments. That's a little different, because usually if you're working in the government, you are basically stationed in one city or one area, one state. There may be some kind of travel, right, depending upon who you are working for, but you're basically stationed. But when you work for corporate, there is a higher probability that you may end up having to move to another city and state to serve another division. Then it gets a little tricky. So then, are you committed to your career? And then you have to think about the demands of marriage. That's why it may not be a good idea to bring a child into that kind of context until you both get to a place where you are stable in your career, not just financially, but you have moved so much up the ladder. Now you are directors wherever you are. And it usually takes you staying in the director position 10, 15 years before you even consider a vice president position. Okay, now that brings about some kind of stability. You can build from there. So even if you have a child, by the time you may have to relocate again, that child will be 10. That child will be 15. The child wouldn't want to leave, right? Because they wouldn't want to leave their friends, but it's a lot different than having to move a baby. And then what are your beliefs about a potential partner quitting his or her job or career? That's important too, because you're getting a lot of people who are very dissatisfied with their current jobs and careers, and they may want to leave. I'm not talking about a person who job hops, you know. I'm talking about a person who was serving in their job or career for 25 years and then they decide they want to leave. Or no, I'm sorry, 10, 15 years and they decide they want to leave. They haven't even spent the requisite time in order to get to retirement. Okay, well, that's a little different. How will you judge that situation? Family and friends. So marriage requires that two partners be aware of the role of family and friends and how they influence the marriage environment. Do you run to your friends or family members when there is a conflict? Are you comfortable with giving friends and family money when they need help? How will you handle the inherent conflict when your partner must communicate with his ex-partner over their child or children? What would you do if your in-laws told your partner that he should not marry you? And this happens. I had an ex whose aunt told him basically not to marry me because I was too dark, even though he was dark himself, and she pushed him to marry a light-skinned black woman, right? So this definitely happens. What would you do in that situation? Well, he pulled out and he agreed with the aunt, and then he ended up marrying a light-skinned a light-skinned black woman. But they had known each other for so many years from high school. So I didn't feel really bad about that situation. And really, he was just not the right person for me anyway. But the family and friends, running to your family and friends, remember you did that as a single adult. When there was a conflict, you always went to your family and friends. You had this sister circle at the house. Everybody came over. Y'all ate some ice cream or something like that. And y'all came together to resolve your individual conflict. Well, you are married now. You will be married. You can't go and use your friends to resolve a conflict where you have a husband at the house. Another thing, are you comfortable with giving friends and family money? So that's another thing you got to discuss at the dinner table between you and your husband. See, you still may end up doing it, but people want the respect of asking them. And it's not necessarily asking for permission, but just engaging in conversation about it. Okay. There's always an inherent conflict between your partner's ex and their children. So how would that happen? Because sometimes you get partners, the exes don't want you to be a disciplinarian with the children. But the children can't disrespect the new partner, who would be you. So there still has to maybe be coming together and talking about how you will approach the situation with their child not acting right at the house, right? There's always going to be some challenges because as soon as you say the child is not acting right, the person interprets it as, oh, I have a problem child. That's not what I said, right? The child is not doing something right here, right? Sex. So marriage requires that two partners have sex within the marriage environment. So what is your sexual desire? What are your beliefs about pornography in the marriage environment? Do you understand that sex is part of the marriage environment? Do you believe in withholding sex in the marriage environment? So sexual desire is very important. Not everybody wants the kinkiness of sex. Maybe once or twice, but not like all the time, right? So some people like open marriages. Some people may be bisexual. If you are not bisexual, I would not marry a person who was bisexual because to me it's still cheating. And so you run the risk of having too many people in the bed, right? Pornography, the person who loves pornography might get attached to it. So then whatever's going on the screen, they want you to do to them, right? Or they want to do to you. I don't think that's very healthy. I don't think pornography as a general rule is healthy. It's not a good healthy option psychologically. Do you understand that sex is part of the marriage environment? So you can't go around withholding sex all the time. There may be moments when you have to withhold sex, maybe because you as a woman got your cycle, maybe because there's a pain or something like that. But you should not withhold sex out of a gain, out of punishment or something, right? If your husband cheats, yeah, you may have to withhold sex because giving him sex is only rewarding the cheating that he did. So you may have to talk things out, but sex is part of the marriage environment. Now let's check premarital plans. So do you think marriage is for you? Are you a loner? Do you prefer singleness? Do you prefer sex outside of marriage? And this is very important because marriage may not be for everybody. Not, I have an audio on YouTube. Not everyone is built for relationship. And sometimes, singleness in the Bible is a gift. It is a gift of singleness. That a lot of times you may do better accomplishing life and living and navigating life as a single person. I don't want to push anything on you in terms of some sort of ideology or whatever. You have to determine if marriage is for you. If you look at the previous slides and the questions posed, you should know if it is for you. To me, I'm a loner. I honestly don't need a whole bunch of people around me to live my life and to be happy. I'm not lonely. I don't cry about being a loner, right? I may have some other little issues or whatever, but it's not. I don't necessarily need. I need purpose. I need to accomplish the things that I'm supposed to do on this earth that God has called me. I would feel more regret that I didn't accomplish the task that God has for me to do than not getting married. So that's something, but I still may desire to get married as well. So like I said, I don't want to push anything on you. That's something that I have to consider, and that's something that you have to consider on your own. So conclusions, beliefs about mistakes. So I don't have a full conclusion. I just thought that this right here, this quote from the film Unfaithful, was very important. When I put this presentation together, I thought about it. The movie had just come on HBO, so it was very fresh in my mind. But this is the conversation that Paul Vartan is having with Connie Sumner in Unfaithful. Richard Gere was her husband. And she was talking about mistakes or something like that. And Paul Vartan made a very interesting statement that I did not catch all the times I have watched this film. I did not catch it until now, and it could be because it was for me to catch it now. There is no such thing as a mistake. There is what you do and what you don't do. And it is as simple as that. It is black and white. It is not issues of gray. That there is the thing that you do, and then there's the thing that you don't do. And so if Connie did not want to have an affair, then she didn't have to do it. There was nothing that forced her to have an affair. She forced herself. She sought it out. She visualized it. She sought it out. She made the call. She visited him multiple times, and she had an affair. Period. She had already had an affair in her heart, emotionally, even before she got there. But there is no such thing as a mistake. There is what you do and what you don't do, and that's what I want to leave you with. That even if we're not talking about affairs in this pre-singles counseling coaching curriculum orientation, that if you find yourself getting into the dating market and the sex market, and then you get pregnant or something like that, and you didn't intend for that. You say that out loud. I didn't intend for that. I wasn't planning for that. Well, you actually were planning for that, because if you didn't use any protection, right, you were planning for it. But this is something, if you date with purpose, if you date with a goal, as a single individual, this will help you to hedge against that particular issue. If you don't want to have sex that to lead with a baby, then you need to push for the partner to use contraception, or you need to push for yourself to use contraception, or perform a number of strategies like the pull-out game. I don't know. But this is you living a single life with purpose, with a plan, with a goal, so that things like this just don't pop up. And you say, oh, I didn't mean to, I'm sorry, I should have done better. Okay. Because you can't say that all the time. Once the child is here, that's the rest of your life. Once you get with the wrong partner who might introduce you to drugs, that is an addiction that's going to take some time to get over and resolve. Once you get involved with somebody that you finally and fall in love and find out that he's married, that's hard to get out of. You can get out of it, but it's hard to get out of. So that's why it's important to think about being single, understand, date with a person, establish objectives, because if you don't, you're going to find that what you do in your personal life is going to affect your academic and professional lives, especially your professional. You don't want Paul Vartan to come visit you at your job because you waited too long to cut it off, right? So I'm going to leave you with this as you think about your singleness and whether you want to stay single to single, whether you want to begin dating single to dating single, or whether you are interested in marriage, single dating, or dating single to single leading to marriage, right? So that's something that I want you to think about, and I thank you very much for listening to this lecture. All right, so hopefully you were able to gain insight from this video discussion. Please like, subscribe, and visit. So please like the video, hit the notification bell for more discussions. I am re-uploading all of my audios, so I needed to make some changes to them. You can visit my website for more content at reginayfavors.com. If you want to send me an email, you can send an email reginayfavors@yahoo.com. Please also purchase the book. It's going to come out in spring 2021, so I had to make changes to my book to update it, and I also updated the title. So the original title was Bait, Hook, and Switch, Confessions of a Rebound Girl, and I have updated the title to Toxic Encounters, Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships. So right now I'm still basically editing it, and I want to make it available in spring 2021. So thank you very much for visiting my channel, and I am Regina Y. Favors. Have a great day.